judge in Miami today followed the jury's recommendation and sentenced Theodore Bundy to die in the electric chair for the murder of two co-eds. Bundy is the 136th person under death sentence in Florida. Ed Rabel reports.
Before pronouncing the sentence, Judge Edward Cowart let Bundy make a statement.
It is expected that Ted Bundy may have raped and murdered up to 100 women. Ted Bundy is without a doubt one of the most evil people to ever live. On November 24, 1946, Theodore Robert Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont, at a home for unwed mothers. Ted and his mother moved to her parents' home in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, shortly after he was born. Her parents raised him as their own child, and Bundy thought his mother was his sister. When Ted was 4 years old, him and his mother moved out west to Tacoma, Washington, where his mother met Johnny Bundy. Johnny and Eleanor, Ted's real mother, adopted him when he was 5 years old in 1951. They had 4 children together, but Ted didn't bond with his new family and still didn't know that his sister was actually his mother. In 1966, Ted enrolled in the University of Washington. This is where he met his dream girl, Stephanie, but she left him, saying that he wasn't ambitious enough. Bundy grew up poor and ashamed of being poor. It is believed that Stephanie leaving him for the reasons she did hit Ted hard, considering his pre-existing embarrassment of his social class. Bundy dropped out of the University of Washington in 1968. He returned to the East Coast, and while back home, he finds his birth certificate and discovers that his sister is actually his mother. After the betrayal of Stephanie and now his mother and grandmother, Ted seems to decide that women cannot be trusted. In 1969, at age 22, Bundy went back to the University of Washington, this time as a psychology major. He met and started dating single mother Elizabeth, and started working for a suicide hotline until he graduated. Then he went to work for the Republican governor's campaign. In September 1973, Bundy was accepted into law school in Tacoma, Washington. At this point, Bundy feels he has successfully climbed the social class ladder, and before going to law school, he takes a trip to California and rekindles his relationship with his dream girl, Stephanie. They got engaged and planned to get married. He's good enough now. But Bundy was out for revenge. Out of nowhere, he leaves her to regain control and get back at her for rejecting him. He went back to Washington, and on January 4th, 1974, he broke into the apartment of an 18-year-old girl at the university. She was asleep. He beat and raped her with a metal pole. The girl was unconscious for 10 days. She lived, but was permanently injured. In February 1974, in Seattle, Washington, at 27 years old, Bundy went from rapist to killer. Bundy attacked and killed 21-year-old student Linda. He broke into her room, bashed in her skull, then took her body to the forest in Washington. Her body was found a year later in 1975. Bundy then went on a violent killing spree. He would lure women to his car, saying he needed help with something. He'd often have his arm wrapped in a sling to appear injured. Bundy killed 8 women in the first 6 months of 1974. Then on July 14th, he attacked 2 women in broad daylight at a state park, 23-year-old Janice and 19-year-old Denise. Bundy later said he kidnapped both the women from the park within a few hours of each other. He raped them and made one watch as he murdered the other. In September 1974, Bundy left Washington to go to law school in Salt Lake City at the University of Utah. Bundy's first kill in Utah was on October 2nd, 1974, a 16-year-old girl whose body has never been found. October 11th, Bundy offered a ride to Rhonda Stapley, who was waiting for a bus. He told her that he was a law student. She felt lucky to meet this well-dressed, handsome law student and accepted the ride. After a few blocks, Bundy turned away from the university, saying he had to run an errand. Bundy drove Rhonda up into Big Cottonwood Canyon. Rhonda thought Bundy was looking for a secluded area to make out and was thinking of a way to politely get out of the situation without embarrassment. Bundy pulled off the road into a picnic area, turned toward Rhonda, leaned in like he was going to kiss her. He paused and said, "You know what? I'm going to kill you." He began strangling her. She lost consciousness. When she woke up, she was laying on the picnic table and Bundy was sitting on her chest. He was allowing her to regain consciousness, then strangling her until she passed out over and over. The last time she regained consciousness, Bundy was in his car, the infamous VW Beetle, looking for something. Rhonda took her opportunity and ran in the opposite direction. She ended up falling into a rushing river, smashing into boulders along the way, but she eventually climbed out to safety. Rhonda kept this attack a secret for over 30 years, saying she felt embarrassed, stupid, and ashamed. She was also part of the Latter-day Saints religion and was taught that it would be better to lose her life than to lose her virtue. November 1974. Rhonda's escape didn't slow Ted down. Just a few weeks later, he was at a mall in Utah posed as a police officer. He got 18-year-old Carol in his car, but she got away in a struggle. Bundy didn't give up. November 8th, he kidnapped 17-year-old Deborah. She was never seen again. All this time, Bundy was still dating Elizabeth in Seattle. At this time, Bundy wasn't a suspect, but there was a witness from the attack in July of the two women at the park that said they remembered a guy in a blue VW Beetle, and police drew a composite sketch that was broadcast nationwide and seen by Elizabeth. Elizabeth called the police, but they dismissed her claims because Bundy was a law student. In the first part of 1975, Bundy had traveled to Colorado, where he raped and killed 3 women. In May, he assaulted a 12-year-old girl that he abducted from her school in Idaho. In June 1975, he went back to Utah and killed a 15-year-old girl. 2 months later, while driving around in Utah, he was pulled over for driving erratically. The officer notices the front passenger seat of Bundy's VW Beetle is missing. He also sees an ice pick, ski mask, and a crowbar. This makes the officer suspicious, but Bundy couldn't be tied to any murders. So 3 Utah detectives flew to Seattle and met up with Washington State Police. They interviewed Bundy's girlfriend, Elizabeth. She told them she had found suspicious items in their apartment, including meat cleavers and a bag of women's clothing. Bundy became worried and sold his VW Beetle, but police located and searched the car. They found strands of hair from 3 women, including survivor Carol. On October 2nd, 1975, police located Bundy in Utah and arrested him. They put him in a lineup, and Carol identified him as the man that abducted her. They didn't have evidence to charge him with any murders, but were able to charge him with Carol's abduction and assault. On June 30th, 1976, Bundy was sentenced to serve 1 to 15 years. He was moved to a jail in Colorado. While in jail, police were gathering evidence to charge him with murder. He decided to represent himself in order to get access to the law library, where he jumped out of the window and went on a run, but was caught 6 days later. After spending another year in jail, he one day notices a hole in the ceiling of his cell. He climbed through the hole and ended up in the apartment of the chief jailer. He walked right out the front door, free again. Bundy makes his way to Florida, where he goes on a rampage. On January 15, 1978, in the middle of the night, Bundy broke into a sorority house. Within 15 minutes, he brutally beat, raped, and strangled 4 girls. 2 of them survived. While police are in the sorority house the next day, they get a call of strange noises at an apartment 6 blocks away. Bundy had broken into another student's apartment and savagely beaten her. When police arrived, she was laying in a pool of blood. Bundy was leaving out the back window. A few weeks later in northern Florida, Bundy strikes again, killing a 12-year-old girl. After dumping her body in the woods, he stole a car and started driving west. He was stopped by police in Alabama on February 15, 1978 for suspicious driving. Police called in and discovered the car was stolen. After a brief struggle and a warning shot from the officer, Bundy was arrested and taken back to jail in Tallahassee, Florida. He was put in an armor-plated jail cell. Detectives realized that in the sorority house, Bundy had left a bite mark on one of the victims. They got a search warrant for his mouth and had a dentist get bite impressions. On the 25th of June, 1979, his trial began for the murder of the girls in the sorority house and 3 more women. It was the first nationally televised trial in America. On July 24, 1979, the jury convicted Bundy on 2 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. He was given the death penalty twice. Bundy spent 10 years on death row fighting his execution. Bundy confessed to 30 murders during his time on death row, and at 7:16 a.m. on January 24, 1989, at the age of 42, Ted Bundy was executed by electric chair. On his way to the electric chair, he was shouting the names of victims he hadn't confessed to in an attempt to delay his execution.
I'm not asking for mercy, for I find it somewhat absurd to ask for mercy for something I did not do. So I will be tortured for and will suffer for and receive the pain for that act. But I will not share the burden for the guilt.
In imposing sentence, Judge Cowart cited the savagery of the crimes and what he called the indifference of the defendant.
This court, independent of, but in agreement with, the advisory sentence rendered by the jury, does hereby impose the death penalty upon the defendant, Theodore Robert Bundy.
Then, in an unexpected move, perhaps an afterthought, Cowart stunned the courtroom with some parting words for Bundy.
Take care of yourself, young man.
Thank you.
I say that to you sincerely. Take care of yourself. It's a tragedy for this court to see such a total waste, I think, of humanity that I've experienced in this court. You're a bright young man. You made a good lawyer. I'd love to have you practice in front of me, but you went another way, partner.
Bundy says he'll appeal. Meanwhile, he has been ordered to the state prison to await setting of the date of his execution in the electric chair. Ed Rabel, CBS News, Miami.